Well, Hoyoverse finally did it. After the Mbappe special that was version 2, both Vodyanitsa and Vesna have now received buffs, as well as some of their vertical investment also receiving buffs. So let's go over what those buffs are, as well as my updated calculations for them, as well as some minor evaluations. But before we do that, as always, if at any point during the video you are entertained or informed, make sure to drop a like and even consider subscribing, as I talk on various topics regarding Genshin's meta, and I'll try to keep you updated. Shout out to all my lovely channel members, I really appreciate your support, it means the world to me. Hugs and kisses to you all. We will all be searching the area next patch, and I have nothing else to say, so let's just get right into it. Now regarding the changes, nothing I wanted to happen happened. I said that I thought Vesna was fine and didn't really need any more buffs, and for Vodyanitsa, I felt like she needed another buff instead of res shredding and providing quills, as well as some kind of passive or something to make her apply less hydro, but instead it seems like most of the buffs were targeted towards Vesna directly, and Vodyanitsa got more res shredding and more quills. Which, you know what, sure, Genshin, you have it. Our Anima Princess's buffs were very simple. She just received a 12% motion value increase to some of her harder hitting attacks, making her special skills an even larger portion of her damage. And her exploration also got an increase, which is nice. That's it. Once again, I don't really think she needed to be buffed, but it makes her baseline teams better and makes her less dependent on Vodyanitsa, so I'll take it. And speaking of the mermaid, on her elemental skill, she received slightly more resistant shred, which that's exactly what she needed. Woo! And then on top of more cryo and hydro resistant shred from her skill, she also gives 5% more shred from her passive. Woo! But for a buff that's actually going to be very relevant, Vodyanitsa is now going to provide 8 more quills to the active character, going from 17 Stellar Swirl or Cryo/Hydro quills to 25. And this is going to be good for both Vesna teams and Skirk. For Skirk, obviously she wasn't maxing out all of Vodyanitsa's quills regardless, so having more quills that don't lose any damage is of course going to be a buff there. And then for Vesna teams, even though she already consumed all 17 of Vodyanitsa's quills before, Vodyanitsa's quills last for 30 seconds, and Vodyanitsa's also used right before Vesna in most teams, before her skill can refresh any quills. So what this means is that the quills from your last rotation will carry on to your next one. So characters like Cryo MC and Odette on their initial skill nukes will now be receiving Vodyanitsa's buffs, where they weren't able to before, or at the very least they weren't able to before on Vesna teams, as Mizuki teams were always able to do this. So this is going to be a buff that affects Vesna teams a lot more than it does Mizuki teams, TLDR. And I'm not even sure if Hoyoverse was thinking about this, they probably just wanted more quills to give her better synergy with Skirk and Vesna at higher constellations, but inadvertently, they just made Vesna's C0 teams better as well. So yay for the Vesna Nation. And that's basically it for the base kit changes. Besides that, Vesna's signature weapon got buffed, as it just gives more of every stat it buffed already, and Vodyanitsa also had her vertical investment buffed as well to be more impactful, with her C1 now giving you more attack based on her HP, and her C6 was also buffed as well, in which I'll talk about the early constellations and weapons in my banner review, which will be releasing this week, so make sure that you're subscribed with notifications on for that. Now getting into everyone's favorite part of the video, I can see when you skip here, we can talk about the calculations. I'm gonna switch it up though, let's start by discussing Skirk. Last week Vodyanitsa just wasn't really a worthwhile vertical investment route for Skirk, as she was one of the lowest priority things you could have pulled for, with Skirk's C1, Scofia's C1 and Furina's C1, as well as Skirk's weapon, all being better, more impactful pulls. That is now no longer really going to be the case with the Vodyanitsa buffs, as with her buffs, she is now on par with a vertical upgrade like Skirk's signature weapon, whilst being an entire character you can use for other team archetypes and endgame modes like the theater. So now she's one of the highest priority things you can pull for Skirk in fact. And at the baseline calculation level, she raises Skirk to be actually better than Flint's. which, let's not start any agendas, but even C0 R0 Skirk should have a much easier time brute forcing content assuming you can do some of her better combos. Like the one I have listed in my calculations, which don't even involve any walk cancels. So yes, to most Skirk mains, if you're looking for a way to upgrade your Skirk team, I can recommend Vodyanitsa, and you will not be disappointed. And in regards to her being an Escoffier replacement, to anyone who was curious about that, he trying to ignore it. The gap is becoming quite close actually, to the point where you could honestly just put Effie in another team if you wanted to, as she is a pretty good cryo generalist. I've also heard that Farina is also replaceable, assuming you have both Vodyanitsa and Escoffier. I haven't calculated that for myself to make sure, but I wouldn't doubt it. But at the same time, where else would you be using Furina? TLDR, Vodyanitsa is a great character for freeze teams now. You can get her for this role and not feel bad. Now moving into Mizuki, we are getting the Mbappe special. As I said before, Vodyanitsa is not a Stellar Swirl support. She is a Vesna support who happens to be a Stellar Swirl carry, and that's why there's some supportive capabilities for Stellar Swirl teams, but fundamentally she doesn't do that much for the reaction. The extra quills don't matter as Mizuki wasn't maxing out Vesna's quills anyways, and Cryo MC and Odette were already getting the leftover active character quills unlike in Vesna teams, and once again the res shredding also doesn't help that much. So only a minor increase here. You would still much rather use Sucrose or Farazan instead of Vodyanitsa. And now for Vesna, across the board, all of her teams just got better, and better by a decent amount, as Vesna already received a direct damage increase, and then some teams are also double dipping by also getting the Vodyanitsa buffs. And this is shaking up where Vesna's best teams are actually. For one, Vodyanitsa is now just the best in slot for Vesna, replacing Farazan, and this gap can widen even more in practice as you don't need to care about Farazan's energy requirements. The other team that's competitive is Sustainless, and also this is assuming you have the Gacha Bow, in which the team is around 7% worse without it. So realistically, Vodyanitsa is going to be Vesna's best in slot now. And even when using a sustain like Chi-Chi, getting Vodyanitsa is relative to pulling for Vesna's signature weapon. So while you still don't really need Vodyanitsa, as you can see, she is still going to be the premier option. And the baseline power of all of her teams across the board have increased by like 5 to 10k DPS, making her decently more powerful than Mizuki, to the point where you can make stronger arguments for pulling for Vesna, since the gap between her and Mizuki is bigger. But I'll just save those talks for my banner review that will be later this week. And in regards to a power ranking, when we do get C6 or 5 MC, Vesna kinda just becomes the best DPS in the game, being ahead of even Sanjone. The only sort of issue with this line of thinking is the same as the lunar carries, where we only really have one Odette, so someone like Sanjone can't be as strong as she is, while Vesna is as strong as she is. But still, you aren't really going to be disappointed by Vesna's performance. This is also going to be the same case with Vodyanitsa, assuming you are playing her in a freeze or Vesna team. I don't really think you're going to be disappointed in her performance either, as long as you're pulling her for these things. And she's no longer the complete jobber she was last week. There are more accounts to where I can look at you and say, yes, pulling for Vodyanitsa would be a very good idea. But with that, I don't think I have anything else to say. Both Vodyanitsa and Vesna are better than they were last week. Vodyanitsa is now a worthwhile pull for freeze or Vesna teams, and Vesna is just a better DPS than she was, to the point where you may consider benching her Mizuki to go out of your way to get her. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on these buffs, as I would love to hear it and I respond to almost every single comment. Channel members, thank you so much for your continued support. It means the world to me. I love you all. Hope you all have an amazing day. Thank you to everyone else for watching the video, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. Peace.